sit down with them and get them to understand that. And of course, you're all subject to Freedom of Information Act requests in those states. So those are careful conversations. You can't leave a lot of paper behind. You really have to be careful about how you approach it. But education was key with respect to that. And some states are more sophisticated, but you don't necessarily know what you're dealing with until you start working with it state by state. So an important caution there. I think that probably the most troublesome, so the 401, I think that will remain a series of challenges for projects going forward, depending on the state that you're in, because that is a place where opposition can apply effectively a lot of pressure. The other decision that came out very recently, middle of August, was a Sierra Club, late August, Sierra Club decision, where they challenged a FERC certificate that was issued to the Sable Trail Pipeline, and claiming that their EIS was deficient in a number of areas, environmental justice, a few other things. But the one that stuck, and the one that they were able to get relief on from the DC Circuit, was with respect to the consideration of downstream greenhouse gas effects, indirect effects. So that one, I think, has a lot more legs to it for the industry. We're already seeing comments being submitted by other opponents to other projects citing to the decision. We're going to see a lot more of it. I think the biggest issue is that there's not a lot of guidance out there. So they claim, of course, that there's inadequate consideration, that you should be considering the impacts that are going to be caused by the people to whom you are delivering gas. So with respect to that particular pipeline, it was the power plants, but the decision isn't limited to that necessarily. It just says, others. So that is going to be problematic. And it says, at a minimum, you should estimate the amount of power plant carbon emissions that the pipeline will make possible. CEQ issued guidance on greenhouse gas emissions last year. Those were withdrawn earlier this year. I'm not sure that they would have necessarily helped in this regard, but nonetheless, it's a bit of a black hole. No standard methodology. That's what FERC argued. There's no standard methodology. There was a nod to it in the EIS. There certainly was a paragraph about it, but there weren't any calculations done. And they said that's not enough. It's not enough information for the public to be able to understand what the direct and indirect effects are. So that one, I think, particularly as an industry, is going to require some. I don't know exactly what FERC's going to do. I imagine they'll issue a supplemental EIS. The pipeline's operating. It's really more of an issue, in my opinion, for future projects, but it's really going to be significant for the industry to get their arms around how they're going to deal with that issue. So it has been well publicized with the opposition, so we'll be hearing more of that. So I thought this was just interesting to bring up. I just did a good Google search on this, and they run on algorithms. Not that I understand really what that is, but it sounds good. But I thought it was so interesting. So you just type in pipeline protesters and look at all the tabs across the top. I thought that's what was fascinating. And compare that to 10 years ago. So climate change, which was really, the Keystone was the stalking horse for that in a lot of ways. But, so they're on here a couple times, but they're all different, both places and subjects listed at the top. And I thought, boy, that really, I can almost match it up with our 10-year shale gas, just exponentially more supply available there and resources there to this. If you charted the two, I think they would look almost identical. So that, to me, that is fascinating. And it also brings up, which one thing we haven't really talked about, are some of the tribal issues as well, where I think that we will be seeing that's not going to go away for any project that has tribal interest, whether you cross or are near or adjacent to tribal lands. But also, don't forget that almost anywhere in the country you're likely to run into tribal remains of some sort. And I think we're going to be seeing a much more empowered set of issues coming out of those sovereign nations than we have before, or set of pressures coming out. And again, some of that will land on states. So I think, just a couple things. So we are going to see, I think, going forward, more active states than we have before on each of the projects that go through their state. I think on the 401, we'll see two things. Most states issue one 401 water quality certification for a project running through their state. It's going to run through across a lot of different streams. It have a lot of different potential impacts, but one water quality certification. But there are some states that are starting to insist and have insisted on multiple water quality certifications for every water crossing, which is difficult from the defense standpoint. So obviously it would be preferable to have one if you have the option. But that could get difficult to manage going forward. I think it remains to be seen really where the permit streamlining efforts will go this go around, whether that's going to have a measurable effect in a positive way on projects. We would hope so. I think that goes well beyond pipeline projects. That goes to a lot of the other projects we talked about here today that have much longer timelines. Most pipeline projects from the time of the pre-application process to the end of construction and commencement is roughly 4 to 5 years, which is really not that bad when you think about it in terms of the amount of right-of-way you have to acquire and everything else. That's not all because of the permits. It just takes that long. So I think some of the same lessons that Mary Beth put up on her slide are applicable here, but a lot of it just goes to your pre-project scoping. We've had some projects that have really never gotten off the ground for more than one reason. One would be really not carefully vetting where the pipeline is going to go. You don't want to. The biggest landowner in the state owns all the newspapers. That might not be helpful. If there are certain things you just want to stay away from. Who would have thought? Yeah. So some things like that, pre-project scoping, and have a broad audience in your pre-project scoping, not just your business development people. Include your lawyers, include people who live in that state for your company. People who have an awareness of where this is actually going to go. That makes a big difference and can avoid a whole lot of pain on the front end that you have to deal with. That can really impact how your project is perceived for the remainder of the project. Early identification of all required permits. I can't tell you how much time we spend on that for projects. And every state has its own unique little pieces to it that are different than in other states. But the federal part is, I don't want to say it's easier, but you know what those are. The state ones can get different, and a lot of times those processes are just not all that well vetted out, and they're very political. So you do have to be careful with those. I think along those same lines, just in terms of, and I think a couple people have mentioned this about being transparent and being communicative with your regulators, but also with your public. Cannot say that enough. That matters a lot. You're not going to please everybody. There's no question about it. And you have to be incredibly patient to get to the conclusion of any project. But if you have done a lot of your homework on the front end, and you do anticipate most of almost everything, and you really can if you put enough effort into it on the front end, you will get to that finish point. It's not always easy, and it takes a lot of being on the high road, but you can get there. And I do think that putting that effort in on the front end cannot be overstated. And then we see most of on the federal side, there are a few things that can trip you up with the core 408 permits if the extending ones ever had to get those can be problematic. But for the most part, it's funny to me how that was always the big area for challenge in the past, because that was where you knew the permit was going to be challenged. And really, we're fighting it out in different places now. We're fighting it out literally on the ground, fighting out at 401 stage, and certainly at the EIS, the FERC stage, challenge at FERC. So I think I'm probably out of time, but I do hope that people, if you have any questions, will hopefully have a chance to answer them. Thank you.
As we've said, hold your questions to the end, and we have done a great job, everyone, of staying on time today. And as this fact-filled day continues, our next speaker is Mr. Paul Bailey, who serves as President and CEO of American Coalition for Clean Coal Electricity, ACE. ACE is one of the board's associate members and a conference sponsor. Mr. Bailey began his career working on environmental and energy policy issues as an analyst at Oak Ridge National Laboratory before joining the Southern Company as a nuclear licensing engineer and later worked in Southern's D.C. office. He left Southern to serve as a political appointee in Bush 41 administration at the Department of Energy, where he had several positions, including special assistant to the Deputy Secretary of Energy. Following DOE, Mr. Bailey served in various positions at the American Petroleum Institute, the Edison Electric Institute, NatSource LLC, Kindling Group. The Hill has named Paul as one of the top influentials in Washington for several years. Now, to share with us his perspective on the importance of our nation's coal fleet, please welcome Paul Bailey.
Good morning, everyone. I have this watch here because my responsibility is to get you out of here by 10:30. This is the only thing worse than being the last pick before a golf match. Over the last 8 years, well, let's take the last 8 years. They weren't that enjoyable or satisfying. You represent the coal fleet, which we do. So we were, I guess, the most politically incorrect energy source for about the last 8 years. And we noticed after the election, Michelle Bloodworth is here with me. She filled a lot of press calls. So, before the election, we would get some thoughtful questions from the press, and we'd get some snarky questions from the press. Usually they were looking for us to say something slightly outrageous, and sometimes we would take a bait. So right after the election, we started getting a lot of thoughtful questions from the press about the coal fleet, about the effect of President Trump's policies on the coal fleet. So life's gotten a lot more interesting and a little more satisfying since the election. This is not a political statement, by the way. Let's see if I'm not right. So we represent the coal fleet. I'm going to spend a little more time on some of these slides than on others. There we go. I just told you who we are. But this is why we need a coal fleet in the U.S. today. Now, before I forget about it, those of you who leave for break early, that's all right. Remember just one thing, if you don't get anything else out of this whole conversation we're about to have. We need a coal fleet in the U.S. just like we need a nuclear fleet, and just like we need these other energy sources to maintain a reliable and resilient electric grid. We're going to talk a little bit about resilience today. That's a term that's being used more and more today. We need a coal fleet for grid reliability and resilience. The coal fleet provides 24/7 power, baseload power. You're all familiar with that, just like nuclear, gas does that, hydro does that. Fuel security we'll talk about in a minute. Depending on which coal plant it is, it has somewhere between 70 and 80 days supply of coal sitting there on site. That is fuel security, fuel assurance. You've heard DOE Secretary Perry talk about fuel security. That's fuel security right there. Obviously, we need coal to have diverse electricity sources in the country. We have 6 of those right now. When I started in the industry, there were 3. You had coal, you had nuclear, and you had hydro. People use natural gas. I'm so far back in time, people use combustion turbines, simple cycle with natural gas. That was about it. So now we have at least 6 electricity resources, and the term now is resources, no longer fuel source, because we have demand response. All those contribute to fuel diversity or resource diversity. And of course, coal is a very affordable fuel. The coal fleet today is smaller than it was in 2010. It will have shrunk by about a third by the time these coal retirements all happen. About 20% of the coal retirements have taken place so far. We keep careful track of those, as you can imagine. 3/4 of those are due to U.S. policies or people who get it out. We're pretty careful about talking to utilities who make these announcements, but I didn't come in here to get an argument with anybody about why they're happening, because they have happened. So at some point in time, in the near future, we'll have about a third of the coal fleet that will retire. Coal Fleet provides, when I started work race, it was about half the electricity in the country. It's down to about 30% now. If DOE is right, it will be 30% for a while, pretty long time. Now, roughly 2/3 of the coal fleet is in ISO RTO, grid operated, whatever you call it, territories. 12 of the 16 SSEB states, part of all of those states are operating or served by wholesale electricity markets. That's very important to remember. Some more information about the coal fleet. Let me talk about the challenges right now. You're probably familiar with those, but I'm just going to summarize. First one is we've had a lot of policies that are not favorable to coal fleet. A lot of those environmental policies. Some of these are subsidies for other fuel sources. Some of these are state mandates for renewable things like that. Those are well-known challenges. And we have low natural gas prices. That's good for everybody except the coal fleet, I guess you could say. And then we have low electricity load growth. Now what happens, in the past, electricity was growing over 2% a year. So the electricity pie got larger. And everybody's piece of that pie got larger. Electricity is not growing now. So it's a zero-sum game. If gas prices are low, then gas displaces coal, et cetera, et cetera. So load growth does have a lot to do with the future of coal. It also makes it harder to justify building new coal plants. The opportunity the coal fleet has right now is this resilience issue and on-site fuel security. Just to summarize where we are in the 16 SSEB states, these are the coal retirements that have been announced or happened so far. Almost 200 coal-fired generating units. It's 37,500 megawatts of generating capacity. I was trying to figure out a way to tell you how big that is. The state of Florida and the state of Texas. Others have touched on, I'm sure will touch on EPA policies. There are a lot of EPA policies. Most or all those are likely to be changed. Some of them have been changed so far. These are the ones that we have focused on and will focus on the most. The biggest one for most everybody in the electric sector, environmental relief and power plant. We expect to see any day now a formal proposal from the administration to withdraw, rescind, whatever the term they use, the Clean Power Plan. The Clean Power Plan has been roadkill ever since the election. Everybody knew it was going to go away. The question is whether and what would replace the Clean Power Plan. My prediction is it will be some sort of power plant efficiency improvement program. Having spent a lot of time with lawyers, and it's generous reading my background, I'm not an attorney. Or do I want to play an attorney? But I've talked to a lot of attorneys about this is going to get very, very complicated. And what you might want to remember is that President Trump is a one-term president, and you don't know whether anybody's going to be a one-term president. Most of these issues that this administration deals with, most of the regulations that change will be litigated and properly handled by the next president. So this does create some more uncertainty in the future for the coal fleet and other energy sources. I'm not going to go through each one of these issues, but we expect the administration, well, I'll tell you what, I will do this quickly. ELG's administration is going to rewrite that one. They started rewriting coal combustion residuals, also known as coal ash. The administration is about to take some steps at later deadlines to rewrite that rule. They'll deal with new source review at some point fairly soon. If we have inside the fence replacement of Clean Power Plant, the administration will have to do something about new source review. Regional haze does not affect the East generally, or do I expect it to, but we have numbers in the West and across the air pollution. The list could go on and on and on. The administration has a lot of rules to deal with right now. The last count I took, there are 15 key politicals that EPA needs to function. Now, there are a lot of politicals, there are 15 that are key. And 7 of those, only half of those, have been nominated or confirmed at this point in time. the nominee for the air office, which is a big deal to us, my guess is he will be confirmed by the Senate sometime before Thanksgiving. So this is taking a long time to work out policy changes. This is what the future looks like right now, according to the Energy Information Administration. We're trying to use colors that would show up well. We've lost the values on there. But about 3/4 of the electric generating capacity in the U.S. by 2040 will be gas and renewables. 3/4 is gas and renewables. And my guess is it's more likely to become more gas and renewables than less over a period of time. A lot of gas, a lot of renewables in the future. Now the red bar down there, you can't quite read the legend of it, that's coal and nuclear. Those are traditional baseload generating resources. You can see the electric grid shifting out there in most productions. That has a lot to do with the price of renewables coming down, has a lot to do with the price of natural gas. All right, this is what I want to talk to you about. When I was growing up in the industry, until really about the last couple of years, people talked about reliability. Reliability is an agreed on definition. They're agreed on criteria for it. Some of it's a mathematical exercise. You have electricity generators in the public talking about reliability. Resilience kind of came up on the radar screen in 2009. And since then, I would say concerns about maintaining grid resilience have grown. And one of the reasons those concerns have grown is because of retirement of baseload electricity sources, coal and nuclear. I told you that 1/3 of the coal fleet will have been retired, and there's some fraction of the nuclear fleet that's going to be retired. And that's why DOE did a grid reliability study. It was a large part of that. Ken, have you had the DOE person talk to them?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. I won't plow the same ground again. I'd be interested in hearing questions about what he said. But anyhow, I'll let you read the definition. There are different definitions of resilience. They're all roughly the same ballpark. What we don't have are agreed criteria for measuring resilience, as important as it is. And there's no one organization that has responsibility for resilience. MISO's working on it, PJM's working on it, all the grid operators probably working on one grid or another. FERC finally has a forum. They're going to decide what to do. NERC has a role in this, Public Utility Commission. Everybody's doing that right now on resilience. It's you, not me, it's somebody else. We need to get this issue addressed very, very quickly. And one of the implications of this is what electricity sources do we need to maintain a resilient grid. We think very strongly that coal fleet is undervalued because, for a number of reasons, including that large pile of coal sitting there on site. If you have a problem, that's a good security policy, a good insurance policy. All right, these are some other numbers. We looked at this recently. The numbers looked a little lower than this to us, but there is a lot of coal at the average coal-field power plant today. We'll see over 3 months for about 2 months coal. We'll see over 3 months for stuff by 2 months coal, and then you see some other numbers about the coal fleet and fuel security. Theory of reliability, you've already heard about this. We think the report, there's some things that we would take issue with, but in general, DOE did a really good job of highlighting the issue of grid resilience. They did a very good job there. Secretary Perry and his staff were big defenders. If you haven't read the report, it's long, it's actually a pretty good read if you like this kind of stuff. They did a nice job of running. All right, last thing, I talked about the 8 years that we spent on President Obama. And ACE used to do a lot of polling. And so, we'd spend lots of money on ads and we did polling. We could watch the poll and track the ad buys. When we spent money on advertising, polls that were built to go up. We did about, the highest we got was about 60%. That was spending a lot of money. convincing people that we needed a coal fleet. So we hadn't done a survey for a long time, and we did one in April. And we asked a very fair question, otherwise we're wasting money on coal, we don't ask fair price. And we asked the people that were contacted if they supported the use of coal to generate electricity. Now, we spent 8 years with the Obama administration pretty much beating up on coal. And when we did the polling, 60% of the people we contacted supported the use of coal to generate electricity. It was astounding. I would have guessed it would probably be 40, 35, 40, something like that. So at 60% of the people who in April who supported the use of coal to generate electricity, we ran the survey again in June, the number dropped a little bit, it was 51%. We're going to do another survey to see if hurricanes and change this sort of thing. But there is, I want to leave you that thought because there is a lot more support for using coal to generate electricity than you might think. We have other polling numbers to show up and share those with you. I'm going to stop there. I've exceeded expectations, I hope. It's not quite 10:30. Be glad to entertain questions. That's in order.
I think we made the decision at this point not to take any questions, but there will be an opportunity for you to interact with the members who are here in line to the fact that a number of people are catching early flights and flights right after the lunch, etc. We're going to take a 10-minute break at this time so that we can stay